Hello, and welcome to another game developer interview. This time I have with me Thomas Brush of Atmos Games, and he recently launched his first game, Pinstripe.
Yeah,
How are you doing, Thomas?
good, and I am tired. It's been a crazy first week of launch. It's been really good. Had a good day today. Actually, Jacksepticeye,
Ooh,
he did a playthrough of it today. He did a live stream, so it's really cool, and we're getting some good reviews. So it's really good, really good. I'm tired.
did you see a significant spike in at least page visits? Were
It's
there
hard to
any
know right.
conversions?
Yeah, it's hard to know right now.
Hmm.
It depends. Like if you do research, you kind of get mixed
Right,
like mixed views on whether YouTubers have a significant effect or not. My
right.
assumption is they do, but I don't know. I'll see tomorrow morning
Hmm.
because a lot of the data won't, like wish list data and stuff,
Right.
won't be delivered to me until tomorrow morning.
Hmm. I think in general they do. At least they get more eyeballs on the thing, but I think it also
Yeah,
depends like
yeah. I
on
mean,
the
there.
audience.
Yeah, and there's a reason why they call them influencers. It's
Mm,
because that's probably the best way to describe it. You can't really say they they're causing direct sales, but you can certainly say they're influencing how the whole video game community looks at your work. And you're right, it's about getting eyeballs on the game for sure.
right. Okay, so let's break the ice a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of your favorite games?
Okay, so I don't play that many games. And I can't remember who I was talking to, but I was talking to like another I think it was a writer for Glixel,
Hmm.
and he asked me the same question, and I said I haven't really played anything of significance for the past 5 years, mainly because um, I don't know if people who are probably watching this have probably had the same feeling, which is when you're working on a game for so long and you're putting everything into it, it's really hard to play someone else's game,
Hmm.
because you're gonna get jealous, or you're gonna
Right,
say, "Oh,
right, right.
yeah, I need to put that in my game," and "Oh man, I'm falling short in this area and that area." Um, but it's fun because I finally started playing some games. So Wind Waker is obviously on there. I love the new Zelda. It's just incredible as well. I love that one, and I like Inside. I played Inside because it was
Hmm.
compared with Pinstripe, so I played that. That was really fun, really really fun. And oh man, what was released? It was released right when my game was released. That Edith Finch game. I don't know if
Oh
you've heard
yeah,
about
yeah.
it. It's so good. It's so good and
I
so
just
pretty.
learned. I just learned a couple of days ago. It was made by the same people who made Unfinished Swan, which was a game that I really enjoyed.
Okay, well there you go. And you would think it was made by the same people who made like Gone Home, but
Hmm.
or like Firewatch and stuff. Just because there's a lot of those kinds of games out, and I thought I was going to be annoyed by that, but
Right.
it's really cool to play a very similar game to Gone Home, but it's totally different in the same way, and there's a lot to appreciate. Yeah, it's really cool. So that's probably what I'm playing now, and I noticed that I'm playing games that um, I like the music. So games that I
Right.
like music, those are the ones that I'm going to play. And Edith Finch's soundtrack is just gorgeous. It's so pretty.
Was there any games that sort of influenced you to want to become a game developer?
Yeah, and sorry if there's noise in the background, Shar. There's my dog is right there. Hey, Jeb, Jeb. That's Jeb. He's a golden doodle. He's huge. It's like a big bear. Um, okay, so what was the question? I'm sorry.
uh, any games that influenced you to want to become a game developer?
Yeah, Wind Waker. Wind Waker is on every single list. I love that game. I don't know why. It's just so perfect.
Right.
Wind Waker made me want to make games just because I love the way that they built out the world. It was so uh, such a unique world. To think that they could make a game about sailing across the sea, just this
Hmm.
vast sea, and then but it also there's a lot of islands to explore. It's just really fun. and I love that feeling of exploration. So I definitely wanted to sort of try and do something like that with my work. There's this game, and I'm not afraid to say it, but it's very similar in terms of the aesthetic of my work. And it's a Flash game, and it's called Nevermore 3. And for some reason, it struck a chord in me when I played it. It's a short Flash game. It's very similar to my work. And I'm friends with the guy now who made it, but at the time I wasn't. But it's like, I don't know if you've ever had that feeling where you just play something and all of a sudden you feel like it's inside of you, or it is you. And it just, for some reason, it makes sense to you emotionally. And that was that game, and I just was like, holy crap, like how in the world did this guy make such a beautiful game? And I wanted to see if I could do that as well. And let's see, those are, weirdly enough, those are probably the two most inspirational games. There's not really a connection between the two. Can't really explain it.
Right.
Yeah.
So your story is a really interesting one. You took 5 years and you did it all alone for Pinstripe. How did you get started?
Okay, so I'm trying to figure out the answer to that question. It's so long ago. I started in my parents' my bedroom that I grew up when I was I think I moved into that house when I was 5. So I was in that room just before I went off to college. So I started it there. Then I went to Clemson University in South Carolina, and I worked on it in my college library in the basement. It was nice and cozy down there and quiet. And I just pull out my MacBook and drink coffee and work on the game. Didn't really go to any college parties or anything. I just worked on the game, and then I'd work on it in my apartment as well. So that's where it physically, like the setting, but in terms of like concepting it and getting an idea down, there wasn't a ton of concepting, which there should have been, because that's part of the reason why it took so long. Because I just throw stuff onto the computer and code puzzles and stuff that I was learning Unity while I was building the game.
Right.
So it's basically like, imagine building a house from scratch without knowing how to build a house. And then you look at it and you say, I'm done. 2 years later, I'm done with the house. But then you try and live in it, and it's just garbage, and everything's breaking, and the foundation's breaking, and the windows aren't working, and the doors aren't working. That's basically how it went down. So what you see in Pinstripe is basically not what the game was when it first started, which is probably true for most indie game developers, especially when they're starting out.
Can you tell us about your work environment, like the hardware and the software, whatever tools that you use?
Yeah, so the work environment's changed significantly since the start. Like I said, I started on a MacBook, and I worked inside of Unity 3.5. And I bought that. I bought that software outright, because at the time it wasn't a subscription model. It was like $3,000. So I bought that, and I was like, it was a big investment for me, and I bought it, and I was like, I'll be done with this game in a year, so I might as well buy it now. So I bought the software, and then it took 5 years. So towards the middle of it, I just started using the free version so that I could update to Unity 5 and stuff. So then I went from MacBook to a PC. Finally bought a PC after the Kickstarter last year.
Right.
Got some money, so I bought that, and I moved all of my Unity files onto a PC, and half of the game was purple. All of the sprites were purple, and I was like, what's going on? So I figured out that Unity 3.5 was using an old shader that wasn't supported, but I couldn't figure out what the shader was, but it wasn't supported on PC or something. It was something stupid like that, but it took a while to fix. And I remember I showcased the game at PAX last year, and the demo was great, but a half of the game was broken, completely broken, and purple. So that's kind of my work environment. I can also talk about the music as well because that's a big portion of it. How I
Yeah,
record the music.
yeah, sure.
So the music is it's cool because like nowadays anybody can create something and make it look like they're part of this massive studio.
Right.
But for me, the soundtrack, I hang my hat on my soundtrack, so I feel like it's a good soundtrack, and I'm proud of it. And but really, it's just a MIDI controller
Mm-hmm.
plugged into a computer, and it runs into Logic Pro. So I still record my music on my MacBook. And then I'm not really good at piano, so if things sound like I'm playing really well in the music of Pinstripe, it's because Logic is incredible and like it'll sync up your notes for you, and I'll move notes around, so it's kind of almost like an oil painting where you're constantly putting on layers and layers and layers and layers. If something doesn't sound good, you layer up something else. So layering is really important with my music. But it was all done on a MacBook and a MIDI controller.
So your story is you did everything yourself, except for like a few voice acting parts. And you mentioned in a couple of places that you were really burnt out. Doing this for 5 years, you are never gonna do this again. So how are you gonna... Are you thinking like for your next game to have contractors? And you also mentioned cohesiveness it was really important to you.
Yeah.
Do you think working in a team would sacrifice that?
Yeah, I do. I think it would sacrifice it, but it's also something I'm willing to risk. Um, it's just... Okay, so my plan, I don't even know what I'm going to do, Shar, but my plan is to probably just get someone to develop the project. So doing code.
Right.
I don't think having
The grunt work, basically.
Well, I wouldn't call it grunt work because there's a ton of people who coding is like their gift and they love it. So I think it's deep down like it might be what actually makes a game great because it's smooth and it feels right, and especially when a developer understands like game feel, like how to make the player feel weighty and how to make it feel like the game is alive. That's development, and there's a bridge between developers and the art directors, and when the developer can meet halfway, it feels really, really nice. And I've worked with a couple already on some future projects that I haven't announced yet, and it just feels really, really good because all I have to do is illustrate, write music, and design stuff, and I don't have to worry about the stuff that I'm not great at. I mean, again, I'm not calling it grunt work. It's not grunt work. It's just stuff. It's grunt work for me because I'm terrible at it.
Right.
So yeah, and just FYI, like the quality assurance and voice acting, and like the marketing plan and stuff like the publishers handle. That was stuff that I wasn't 100% involved in. So when I say I made the game completely myself, just for clarity, it's the design, development, illustration, the music,
right,
and yeah, that's which is in fact the whole game. But voice actors and quality assurance, that kind of stuff, you have to pretty much outsource if you want to release a solid title, I think.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Right. And you said that you wanted to tell a story, and it's not really about the gameplay, right? It's about the experience. So what made you decide to make a game instead of like an animation or some sort?
At the time, my first game was Coma, and that game got great exposure. To get somewhere around 5-6 million plays total across the internet, and that was based on Mochi Media's Mochi ads, that data. So they're not in operation anymore. So I don't know if that number is still accurate or whatever. Yeah, so I really liked the exposure games made or games would receive. So I was like, okay, if this is, I'm getting this kind of exposure with Coma, why not take this kind of as a prototype and see what happens when I release it on Steam. So that's kind of why I chose games. The truth is, though, Shar, I probably would really enjoy making a film or an animation. I think, who was it? One of my close friends told me, he's like, why do you make games that are so narrative? Doesn't that take a lot of time? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, why don't you make something more like gamey and just release something in like 5 months? And the reason is because I'm not good at that, and I don't like that. I don't like that kind of stuff. I don't enjoy playing gamey games. And this friend, like, he loves like Bloodborne and stuff. Bloodborne is amazing in terms of the art direction. I could just sit and watch that game all day, but I wouldn't be good at playing that game. I just couldn't do it.
I get what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's probably why I make games. I like the exposure, and it's a great outlet. But I also would really enjoy making an animation or a film or something.
So since you're the lone wolf, right? You have this very close connection to your game. Were you worried that you'll be like Jonathan Blow going to forums after the game was launched and then telling people, no, you're getting this. This is not the point of the game. What was that a worry at all? Like, were you worried about people not getting your game?
Yeah. Okay. So the whole quality. Okay. Right. So the whole quality of the game is, it's a good game if there's an emotional connection.
Right.
But it's a really bad game if there's no emotional connection, because suddenly you just get, in my opinion, mediocre puzzles and mediocre gameplay where you just run around. But the moment where there's an emotional connection, then suddenly it's like, okay, well, this isn't really about the gameplay to begin with. This is about trying to understand this ex-minister's story. Why is he in hell? And oh my gosh, Pinstripe stole his daughter. Who is Pinstripe? So there's all these really cool questions, and there's this massive emotional connection you have with your daughter. That stuff, in my opinion, fills in the gaps of things that I don't necessarily feel I did well, which is like gameplay. So that's kind of why I think I'll always stick with an emotional story in a game, because I know that that's something that I'm good at and I can lean on in spite of all my other flaws as a developer.
Right. So you mentioned cohesiveness was really important, but you also mentioned in a lot of in at least a couple of places that you wrote articles for, that concepting and planning was something that you should have done more. You didn't really do.
Yeah.
My question was, how did you made it cohesive without the planning?
Like time, right? So like, okay, so a concept, basically what a concept does is a concept tells you if something's going to work or not. Okay. And it tells you where to go. So basically, if I made concepts, in a sense, in that I built out an entire level, and that concept didn't work, and then I would just tear it down. So basically, it was just like a HD concept that was coded and programmed and ready to go, and that's just a terrible way to do things. So after college, I graduated college and I started working at a marketing agency. And that's where I learned, like, in order to save money and save time, you have to concept, which is like a no-brainer, but I just didn't do that. So now, ever since I quit my job as a marketing person, I concept everything out. I write out the story, and I'll even write out like things that aren't really supposed to even be given to the player. So like, what's Teddy's, just weird stuff. Like I don't think I did this one specifically, but stuff like what's Teddy's favorite food, or where did he grow up, or all these things that help me identify with my characters. And the moment that you can figure out who your character is, or who the game's, or what the game's levels are, or what the purpose of a level is, if you can figure it out internally, like to a finite, very finite detail, I think is what I'm trying to say,
Mm-hmm.
It's so much easier to put it into your game. So it's
Right.
very specific in my head, but it's kind of abstract when I put it on screen, if that makes sense.
Right. Okay, so you gotta go, but just one last
No,
question.
yeah, keep going. I'll let you know when I need to go.
Okay. Um, do you think you would take a crack at designing a game that doesn't really have a a traditional story, like something like Journey? It doesn't use any words to convey its story. It just uses like body language, emotions,
Hmm.
some sort of like visual input.
Yeah, I probably not. I don't think I would, and I would have said yes a couple of years ago because those were really inspirational games. I
Right.
really like Journey and stuff. Um, but I think now I really like writing out dialogue.
Mm,
And I think some people would probably say that Pinstripe's dialogue is like cringy,
mm-hmm.
because it's very odd. Um, and to me, I think it's hilarious. But like some people might not get it, and that's okay because it's very Tim and Eric, like Adult Swim type stuff.
Right. Right.
Um, but yeah, so I really like writing dialogue and creating
Mm,
characters that say this stuff. So I think I appreciate traditional storytelling. I really do. And I part of me wonders if that's been lost. Um,
mm,
a lot of these, I appreciate all games, but a lot of the games that are chosen to get the limelight
right.
in the industry are very unique, or they have a very specific, like, we did this and it's new and it's fresh. What do you think? And then you're like, well, that's cool, but does it play out in the long run? Like, will I sit and play through this whole game without getting confused or bored?
Right.
And for me personally, I really appreciate a traditional classic adventure. I just love
Mm.
that stuff. And I like making it too. It's a lot of fun.
Um, you have a Pinstripe has a Linux and Mac port, right?
Hmm.
What made you decide to spend the time to make those two ports? A lot of developers were like, they look at the numbers of users that has those
Yeah.
OSs and they're like, this is not
Yeah.
worth my time, kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay, so if it was hard to port, I wouldn't have done it. But
Mm,
Unity is incredible, man. Unity is incredible. I got Pinstripe playing on the PlayStation 4, played through the whole game in like a week. And I know that
oh,
might sound like
nice.
a long time, but like it didn't take long at all. The whole thing. Now PS4 has their whole other like certification process. So there's a lot of
Right.
other stuff I have to do. But my point is porting to Mac, PC, Linux from Unity is like a no-brainer at this point because it's
Mm,
so simple. Um, if I was getting a bunch of bug reports and stuff, then I'd be reconsidering, but I'm not. I mean, everything's fine. So it's pretty straightforward.
right. So, and you had a really, really successful Kickstarter. You were asking for 28,000 and you got like 106,000, which
Yeah.
is insane. And you
Yeah.
got funded within like the first couple of days or something crazy.
Yeah, it's cool.
But you were thinking when you saw that amount of money, you were thinking, did you need that money? But then you actually said there
Yeah.
were unexpected costs that came up. W-
Yeah, I had a
what
dude.
were those costs if you can talk about it? And um,
I'll Well,
so
I
yeah,
don't. Yeah. So I remember I was in a phone call with one of my advisors. I kind of got like some advisors because I didn't know. After the Kickstarter was successful, I felt completely confused about like, okay, where do I go from here? So I won't mention his name, but it's someone who's really higher up, very high
mm,
up in the industry. He's kind of an industry legend that I was lucky to get to know.
right, right,
I don't really know how it happened, but I was in a phone call with him. I was in Disney World celebrating, and I took my wife, and I was on the phone with him, and I said, "Dude, I feel guilty. Like I don't need all this."
right.
And I feel like maybe the Kickstarter went too far. And he was like, "Just wait, just wait." And it's true because first off, the game took longer than expected. So it was supposed to be released in August of 2016, and my backers were great. They were really generous,
Right.
but I just said we're gonna have to wait. So we waited all the way till April 25th, 2017. So that alone is just salary. Okay, so that's money that I have to pay to support my family and stuff. And my wife's a nurse as well, so that helps. But additionally, there's other hard costs as well. So a couple of them are like quality assurance testing, and that took a long time. So you got to pay a company to break your game and tell you how they broke it.
Right.
Then you got to pay a company to localize the game. So we localized for like 6 different languages. Marketing, I paid for some marketing on my end, but that was mostly publisher stuff. I'm trying to think of other costs other than like just living and salary to pay for. But yeah, those things add up. And travel, like going to
conventions.
Yeah. I didn't go to a ton, but it definitely costs so much money.
Right.
I'm trying to think of anything else that I could tell your viewers just so that they are warned of. I'm trying to think. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. But it gets expensive. It's so funny. I have a spreadsheet with all the costs, and they're just small little things.
That add up. That adds up.
They add up, dude. And I'm paying Adobe every month to use Photoshop and Premiere for like the trailer and video assets, and then I'm paying for Unity Pro and just stuff that keeps adding up. And then taxes. So the tax rate in America is, for me, it was like 30%, 35%.
Right.
So
Kickstarter
that's another
fees.
Kickstarter fees. Yeah. So really, you know, if you have this, it's really great because you're like, oh my gosh, you know, what a great feeling to have $100,000, but the pie just starts getting eaten up by all these different things. That's why these big AAA games cost so much money. Right. I can't imagine how I'd be paying for stuff if I had a team.
Right.
Because it's hard enough as it is just me. So it's crazy.
Now I have to wonder, is there a lot of Kickstarter that failed because when they saw the money and they thought they had way more than they needed and they just spent it on like booze or something?
Yeah, well, I can't speak for them, but in my case, I'm very lucky because my dad is like a financial advisor person, so he's helped me understand where to put money and how to be smart and how to budget and stuff. So I was very careful, and I wouldn't say fearful because I don't want to be that kind of. I don't want to be afraid of stuff. I want to be entrepreneurial and fearless, but I was very careful and a little bit anxious about how I was spending money, because the last thing I'd want to do is like run out of money or something because I was, like you were saying, but spending it on booze or something. Because that wasn't the point of the money. The money was to support the studio and make the game.
Okay, so last question and then I'll let you go. Looking back, apart from concepting and planning, what would be something that you would do differently?
A lot of my... sorry, I need to get adjusted here. A lot of the things that I wish that I had changed would probably be emotional things. And it's funny because if you read like my articles on Game Sutra, I always end up like talking about the emotional side of game development. I don't know why. It's probably just because it's always on my mind about how bizarre it feels to make games. I'd probably refocus expectations and goals. So, or reasons why you make a game. So for me, the main reason to make a game was because I wanted to, and I thought it'd be great, and I really wanted to do it.
Right.
And I had a passion for it and an idea. But also part of me, deep down, was watching documentaries that tell you about certain amounts of money and success and all that stuff that really doesn't matter and that you shouldn't think about. But those things creep in over time. You know, you're thinking, okay, I worked 3 years on this game. Surely I've done enough to get the notoriety that I really, really want.
Right.
And to get a certain amount of cash flow so that, you know, I can support the studio for 5 more years, blah, blah, blah. And I think that kind of stuff is pretty poisonous because it'll keep you awake at night when you're trying to control stuff that really is out of your control. The only thing that I have control over is making sure I make a game that emotionally connects with people. That's the only thing I really have control over. You can try and have control over the PR and the marketing of a game, but really you don't. I mean, we released the same week that what's that game? Little Nightmares.
Little Nightmares, yeah.
And what was that game that came out? Outlast came
2?
out last. Yeah, we released and Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. So we released on a week that we thought was really good, and we researched and we were trying really hard, and we were really careful. And then boom, you know, a week before we launch, we find out this stuff, and we're like, crap, that is the worst week to launch. But we had to because we made a commitment, right? So my point is that you really don't have control over a lot, especially when you don't have a ton of money and you're an indie studio. So yeah, I mean, my point is what I would have changed is the way in which I looked at the reasons to make games. You just have to remember why you're making games. And it can't be because of money or success or you want your friends to think you're cool.
Right.
It needs to be because you genuinely enjoy it and you want to share something with the world about you personally. That's my theory. That's what I would have changed. Yeah.
That's a really good answer. And something very interesting here, bro. Just one last question.
Yeah, keep going.
Did you feel that you were competing against games like Mario Kart 8? Do you personally feel that you releasing a game in the same week a game like Mario Kart 8 released, do you feel that is competition, or do you think like your market is totally separate, that there's no competition at all actually? Yeah. Because one is a console, one is a AAA thing, and you're an indie developer that's on PC mostly. So do you think it's a competition?
Yeah. So I can't tell you that there's a competition. I don't know. I'm not that smart. I am not a PR person, so I don't know. But I'll say I felt it. I felt like there was. I felt like I was competing with the bigger titles. The ones that totally, honestly deserved what they got. Of course, Edith Finch and Little Nightmares and Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and Outlast 2. Of course, they deserved the attention they got from the press and the traffic that they got. They deserved it. They earned it, and they probably paid for it too. So I don't blame them at all. But the way that I see Steam is there's a big pool of people who want to play adventure type games, like Pinstripe, and those people have a certain amount of money that they're willing to spend. Like I even have trouble giving $15 to a game, you know, and I'm selling a $15 game. Right. But it's hard for me. So if I'm gonna go buy a game for $15, I'll do that like once a month. And I guess I'm pretty stingy, but like, so my point is everybody's got a certain amount that they're willing to give. So there's this like pile of cash, if you will. Right. And that pile is going to be put somewhere into some game. And it ended up, my theory is, at least for launch, that pile of cash was partly distributed to games that were more deserving than Pinstripe. Pinstripe will be green though. I think it'll have a great shelf life and we'll be fine. But my point is that, yeah, I think I guess if you want to get more specific, there is an adventure game market, and when you release 2 adventure games at once, one of them is probably going to completely obliterate the other one.
Right.
which is totally fine. It's the way that the market works. But fortunately, launch week was actually really good for Pinstripe, so I don't know why I'm complaining, but but it would have been great. It would have been amazing if I wasn't competing with games that were
Right.
better, you know.
So yeah, that's the end of the interview. Thank you very much, Thomas, for spending your time with us.
Yeah, dude, I really had a good time.
So tell people where they can find you, and obviously all the links will be in the description below. The links to Steam. You also have it on GOG, if I'm not mistaken.
Hmm.
Right.
And Twitch. And Twitch. Twitch has a market, apparently.
Right.
So it's on there as well.
Right.
And
So,
Humble Bundle as well.
and all the links will be in the description below. But tell people where they can follow you on social
Yes,
media.
just Atmos Games, ATMOS Games, for Twitter and for Facebook, and atmosgames.com, or just type in my name in Google, and it should come up, Thomas Brush in Google.
Awesome. I wish you the best of luck. Really excited to see what you have next. And yeah, that is all for this interview. Thank you very much to everyone who's been watching or listening. And then we will see you next time. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.